This is Neil. Thank you for appearing, Neil, on my latest
Well,
podcast. I welcome you to literally tell the audience, please, about who you are. I understand you run two different businesses alongside each other. Perhaps explain, if you can, how one became the other and how they work succinctly with each other, basically.
sure. So if we go back to 2008, I was working for a large architecture practice in Edinburgh. I had no plans of becoming self-employed or a sole practitioner. I was quite happy where I was, but then the recession came along. And on the
Hmm.
day that Barack Obama won the American presidential election the first time, I went to work that morning thinking at last, some good news, because it had been just full
Yeah.
of bank insolvencies and people queuing around the block to get to Northern Rock.
Yes.
And by half
I
10
remember it
that
well.
morning, I and 20 something other people were out of a job. And almost every friend I had in the profession lost their job. So that Christmas, aside from getting engaged, I,
Right.
I set up on my own, and I was just working with my laptop from my kitchen table, which is a terrible idea. You should always have your work home in a separate place to where you do your have your
Yeah.
life. But I thought to myself at the time, this is a stopgap. I'll do it for 6 months and then get a real job. And
Yep.
here I am 15 plus years later. So I just focused on altering and extending private homes in Edinburgh. And there's lots of work in that niche in Edinburgh. And I
Yep.
developed a reputation for that over time. Just after lockdown 2021, I started making YouTube videos. You see, I've always worked
Okay.
by myself. I don't have staff, don't have a business partner, I have nobody to talk to. And occasionally it's nice to be able to vent or just have a good
Yes.
rant.
Yeah.
So I would make videos that just explained the reality of what it is I do. I wasn't really doing this with purpose as such.
Yeah.
Did this for over a year, and I got comments in the comment section of people saying, "Oh, I've got a house. It's in London or Manchester or wherever. I'm thinking of doing things to it. Could you give me some advice?" And I thought, that's just
And
too
this,
far
sorry,
away.
was under your subsidiary business, Real Life Architecture. Is that right?
I hadn't formed the business at that point.
Oh, okay.
I had
Right.
my own practice, Capital A Architecture, just
Yeah.
happily working away on house extensions and alterations. And I had a YouTube channel, Real Life
Right.
Architecture.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
After about a year and a half, through a glazing company that I've known for years and done a lot of work with, I got a sponsorship deal with Sunflex UK. I don't know if I can say
Yep.
that on your podcast, but
Yep.
they've been sponsoring the channel for it'll be nearly 2 years,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
that helped give me a bit of breathing room to actually, if you're getting a bit of money every month for this, you can take maybe half a day off every Friday or second Friday to plan out content and be a bit more organized about this. And when I was talking to my brother-in-law, oddly enough, about this phenomenon of people in the comments asking for professional advice. And he said, you
Yes.
could totally build a business around this. You could actually start doing this. Now, I've been giving away advice for free for years. When someone
Yeah.
phones me up and they say, hey, I've got a property in Edinburgh, I'm thinking of doing some stuff to it, I'll spend 15, 20 minutes, even half an hour on the phone talking it through with them to see, one, is it realistic? Am I worth spending my time going to meet this person at their home? Is their budget realistic? Are their
Yeah.
aspirations realistic, etc.? And people seem to value that. So I set up reallifearchitecture.co.uk website purely as a portal where people could book my time and we could have a Zoom chat and I could talk stuff through with them. And in the first 6 months,
Okay.
I only got 6 consultations. But at the moment, it's now running about 2 a week. So I've grown it and got it busier and busier. And if it got to
That's
a point where I
excellent.
was doing 2 a day, I could pretty much give up doing regular practice and focus almost entirely on this. So the aim,
Okay.
I think, for the foreseeable future, for the next 12 months, is to try to grow those number of consultations. I had one this morning. I've got another one booked for the end of the week. So, that's 2 a week average. Some weeks you mightn't get any, and the next week you get 5. So it just works out
Okay.
like that.
And this you
So
mentioned is all over the UK, obviously, because your
it is.
your
That's
original
the
work
beauty
was
of it,
in
because
Scotland. But yeah.
Capital A, I'm not going to take on anything outside the Edinburgh, Lothian, Fife area. Essentially an hour's drive from where I live,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
that just makes life and business easier for me. But with real life architecture, it's a breath of fresh air, because I can meet people from a far wider and more diverse range of backgrounds,
Yeah.
looking at properties all over the UK. And I really enjoy that initial step in the process of where we're looking at their possibilities, looking at their budget, looking at their problems, what's wrong with this house. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a plot of land, sometimes it's a house they own, sometimes it's a house they're thinking of buying, and they want to know, can they do the things they need to do to make that house perfect?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to let people down gently, and sometimes hard, just to
Yeah.
say that you don't have remotely enough money to do what you need to do, or you'll never get planning permission for that, or there's a building regs issue, whatever it might be.
And I'm assuming that it is purely residential. Then you don't look at
It is.
commercial or leisure. And
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in the business. It's excellent. It's a very good idea. It's a unique model, and obviously you're growing quite quickly, and you're getting more exposure. And hopefully, this kind of thing will help you gain exposure. That's what it's for. Um, so, how do you? It's all word of mouth, I presume. You've obviously got a huge following on YouTube and your Instagram and so on and so forth. But
Yeah,
people find you purely then because if they're from all around the country, they're not going to know the next person that you're talking to. So it's
that's
purely
true.
from things like
Social
this
media.
that help you get noticed, which is excellent.
It's predominantly YouTube because I always ask. I always
Yeah,
will, as part of the consultation, just say, and where did you actually find my service?
yeah,
And 90+% it's YouTube, then possibly TikTok, then Insta. I've had one woman found me via my blog and another woman found me via my Facebook page. And when
okay,
she said it, I thought, oh yeah, I actually do have a Facebook page. I haven't posted anything to
right,
that for months,
yeah,
so maybe I should make more of an effort. But it is YouTube that tends to be almost like an encyclopedia. When someone's looking for a specific piece of information, they'll type it in,
yeah,
and YouTube, they keep saying we're the world's second largest search engine. Uh,
yeah,
just behind Google, even though they're
yeah,
both Google and YouTube are both owned by the same company.
yeah,
So, so I try to make content that addresses specific questions.
yeah,
Will you? How does our planning system work?
yeah,
House extension costs per square meter. How long will it take to build your house extension? Can you convert your attic? Signs to look for when are you dealing with a cowboy builder? Specifics that a
yeah.
homeowner new to the construction industry may need to know.
Excellent idea. So anyone asks these questions of YouTube or Google, you come up straight away, I'd imagine, because you've got so
That's
many
the hope.
followers.
So
Yeah,
it's you would think. I know it's an unusual thing for architects to do, but there are other architects and other property professionals out there
yeah,
engaging with YouTube and producing content, and it's really just to show your competence, to demonstrate that you have knowledge, training,
yeah,
experience, competence in an area, and then gently try to persuade some of your viewers to come across to a paid service.
yeah.
So on
Um,
YouTube, it's not actually that unusual a thing
okay,
globally to find professionals
yeah.
talking about what they do in enough detail to persuade people that it's they know what they're doing.
So once obviously you're based in Scotland, you get somebody from London, for example, the other end of the country, other end of the UK that comes to you. You then, I'm assuming, don't take on that work because they're too
No.
far geographically from where you are.
Yep.
What do you say to that individual that's asked you for advice? You give the advice. You then say, okay, you now need to go and find a local architect. What's the process from there?
So at the end of the video consultation, I will write them a summary email which just
Okay.
describes what we've discussed, and
Yep.
I will attach a project guide document to that. And the project guide is available for download from the website separately for £10, but it
Okay.
goes into the summary email, and in that, along with an explanation of how projects are typically broken into stages, like the RABA stages of
Yep.
work, there
Yep.
is a description on how to go about drawing up a short list of suitable local architects. So how you find who is an architect in your locality, REBA,
Okay.
ARB, etc. And then there's a model letter or model email that you can copy and paste and fill in the blanks to say who you are, where your property is, what your budget is, and what you'd like to do to this property.
Okay.
And a set
Yep.
of questions that you would typically want to ask of an architect that you're considering for your project. And it surprises me because it's kind of common sense if you're in the profession, and we kind of take
Yeah.
it for granted that, oh, well, surely
Yeah.
people will know. If you're looking for an architect, you look for an architect who does the kind of work you want to do.
Yeah.
But most people have never met or hired an architect or even set foot on a
Yeah.
building site, they're not really aware of the fact that the profession is somewhat fragmented, and some of us do one kind of work and others
Yep.
do other kinds of work, and there is
which
little or
which
no
lends
overlap.
itself brilliantly to your model, doesn't it? It's
Yeah,
you're
explaining it.
onto something. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think is excellent what you're doing because it's you are in a very well, you're creating a niche market for yourself, aren't you? By
yeah,
answering these questions, because the general public that's not involved in this field that you mentioned, never been on a site, that doesn't
yeah,
know what an architect does necessarily, you're able to answer all these questions and direct them to where they need to go.
yeah.
And uh, potentially feeding new architects from around the country, new clients, by giving leads, aren't you?
I'd like to think so. I've not had anyone from the profession come back and say thanks, by the way, but I just picked up a client who found me. So I mean, there
Yeah,
must be, because I've had a couple of
yeah,
hundred
yeah,
of these consultations, and there have to be architects out there who've taken on a project as a direct result of a client having consulted with me first. I have to
yeah,
be careful though, because I do get people contacting me occasionally saying, "We've got an architect. We're not happy with what that architect is doing. Could you review what they've done, and because
Right.
the RIBA still have rules about supplanting, and I'm RIBA member. I
Yes.
can't take that on, so I have to be careful.
Neil, look, thank you very much for appearing on the podcast today, sharing with my audience the work that you do, the work that you're trying to achieve and grow. I'm really behind what you're doing. I think you're onto a brilliant model. It's nothing like I've heard of before, so it's excellent, and all credit to you, basically.